Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Glad that you tuned in today. I think this is a really important program for folks who are just entering into the self-publishing world and talking to a lot of people. This is about avoiding publishing scams. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you they are prevalent, but it's also pretty easy to kind of spot them from the crowd. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's how you can spot and avoid publishing scams. And I'll give you some tips and some ideas for you, and so that you can proceed along this incredible self-publishing journey with comfort and relax, knowing that you're working with some good people. So with that said, Carter, if you want to start the slideshow, let's get going. All right, here we go. So again, we're welcome to broadcast number 12, or as I'm following the lead of the Super Bowl, it's now XII. Number 12, we've done it. We've made it over a year. So I'm the president emeritus of BookBaby, and I want to welcome you in. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube now. And so I'd like to share a few details about my life. And I was just talking to Carter about it. It's 42 years minus about 2 weeks. I was camping on the Oregon coast, and I heard this amazing sound, this roar. Sounds like a dozen train locomotives roaring along the Oregon coast beach. And about 8:30 in the morning, and I looked over at the people I was with, and we thought that a nuclear bomb had hit Portland. So we ran to the car and turned on the radio, and there was nothing for a while. And it turns out Mount St. Helens had exploded. And even though we were about 250 miles away, the way that sound travels, it actually has these kind of cones, and we were right in the path of that. And I'll tell you, that was an unbelievable experiencing that and literally the fallout for the next few years. So I could have written a book about that, but I haven't so far. But anyway, what I like to say is I think the best qualification I have for doing these chats with you is I myself am a self-published author, and I know the trials and travails and how difficult this journey can be. But I also know how fulfilling this journey can be. So I welcome you to that, and we're going to have a good time today. So 30 minutes of some good information. I'm going to share with you about 15 minutes on my topic. I usually do some marketing or self-publishing topics, and then happy to take your questions for 15 minutes. So by the way, you can type your questions into the comments portion on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get to those at the end of the show. Also, one lucky attendee at every event will be selected at random to do we should have just erased this 15-minute publishing consultation, because they're usually about 45 minutes or an hour, and I really enjoy these conversations. And how you do that is you share this video, you tag a friend in the comment section, and you're automatically entered to win. So find a friend, tag them, put them in the comment section, and hopefully you'll be the one chosen. By the way, this is a good time to tell you we have a Facebook group called Authors of BookBaby. I think we're like 1,500 strong now. It's a very active community. Peers talking to peers. I mean, authors helping authors with questions, not just about BookBaby, just about self-publishing. Every once in a while, we jump in and help moderate a little bit. So you never know, I might jump in, or Carter, or some of the other folks. So be aware that that's available as another resource. All right. So let's get going today. And this is really a kind of instruction about how to scam-proof your book. And unfortunately, I got to say that scams have started since the beginning of time practically. I wouldn't say they've been around that far, although there's that funny Mel Brooks movie where Moses goes up on the mountain and says, "These 15 commandments," then it breaks and it's down to these 10 commandments. But I wouldn't say that scams are that prevalent to that back, but they really have been around as long as books have been available. And they started with traditional publishing first. And what was really rampant back really in the turn of the last century was authors are being charged to have their manuscripts read by folks in the industry just for reading the book. And they would charge anywhere between $50 to $100, which back then, that was a whole lot of money. And agents were particularly the most criminal. In fact, there's one famous agency called the Scott Meredith Agency. And while they were running a legitimate business, they had this mill on the side where they would just go through, manuscripts. They say they read them. They would charge authors, and they would pitch them out. So these wannabe authors were, promised huge distribution and marketing from firms, and there's no way to compare and contrast your experience with other authors. So they're able to really get away with it. And to the point where there was outright stealing of content. An agent would get a manuscript. There was no record, no receipt. and he would put it under his own name and sell it to a publisher. So lots of scammy stuff along the way. But they really did work because they were in isolation. Vanity presses flourished. That's a stigma that we in the self-publishing industry have really fought against. And I have to say now, self-publishing is really no longer a consolation prize. It is a desired entry into the marketplace. But those did flourish. And there were no ratings or testimonials. You really didn't know. There was a little bit of word of mouth, but authors were spread around the globe. And frankly, they were pretty embarrassed to admit that they had been had. So these charlatans were able to, go on for years and even decades with their scams. However, then a very good thing happened to publishing and to other aspects of the world, and that is the internet, because it allowed publishing to really change forever. Amazon launching the Kindle, iPads because or Apple launches the iPad, and suddenly you had the gateways or the gatekeepers were pretty much put aside. You could publish your book if you really wanted to. You were editors, designers, people around like BookBaby now available to help you. And then what followed after that was print-on-demand technology. So what happened with the internet, of course, is it really changed these publishing scams. Suddenly, you've got review sites like Trustpilot, which, by the way, I do believe that's one of the best out there. Google, there's Better Business Bureau, which is so-so. I would more likely trust Trustpilot, quite frankly. But you get people sharing their experiences, and you get word off. There have been some great groups that have popped up that I do want to highlight. Writers Beware is the brainchild of Victoria Strauss, who's been doing this for years now. And she has an amazing list of agents and publishers and even self-publishing companies to avoid. And some of the stories that she shares on that site, you might want to bookmark that. Just Google Writers Beware and always have that just to see. But so I mean, a lot of the old scam and cheats went away because suddenly they were exposed for all. However, it only changed it. It meant that the charlatans had to get a little bit trickier in the way that they go about business. They knew that reviews were out there, so they didn't go away. They just had some new schemes in the digital era. So I'm here to share with you what I think are 4 really good ironclad ways for you to make sure that you're dealing with people who can really help you. All right, and will not take your book away from you or do anything to kind of really steal your dream. So here's the first one. Look, ask Mr. Google. There's nothing like looking at reviews, testimonials, going to writers' forums, say, hey, I'm thinking about publishing with X, or I've used this person as an editor. Has anybody used them? I'm happy to say that the author community is very open and they want to share information to their fellow authors. And there's really a lot of good advice out there if you just ask. So find out, make sure before you sign anything, before you put any dollars, Google their references. And there's 2 trusted sources. Again, Writers Beware, and then Ally is another one, the Alliance of Independent Authors. Orna Ross runs that out of the UK, but it's really a global source. And they have great editorials. They have one about BookBaby. They have one about many other companies as well. Really giving them the straight skinny about should you use them, should you not. I have to say that both Victoria and Orna know that BookBaby is a great and trusted source, and we really do appreciate that. There's also something that's happening, and again, you'll probably catch this on Google too. It's companies that are operating similar imprints, and an imprint is simply a name of a publishing entity, and they're offering the same thing, but it's in different genres. And once they've gone through and gotten bad reviews and bad word of mouth, they kind of move on to an entirely different name, or they go into a different genre. They typically have high-pressure sales reps. They're usually English is their second language. You can tell they're operating from offshore. And what typically they do is they're operating the same pool of companies. And as soon as you said no to company XYZ, they hand your lead off to company ABC, and the whole process starts again. Hey, I hear you're interested in writing a book. Let me tell you about it. And it's an ugly situation. Again, Googling the name of the entity that you're working with, you'll come up with, or hopefully not, instances of they're operating in this kind of way. And there's one real abuser out there. I'm not going to name them. You'll find out when you do your work on Google that typically they have about 25 different imprints now, and they're kind of operating just enough to go from one to another. And strongly urge you to avoid them. Although I do have a little tip, a fun bonus trick. And we send this all the time to our clients saying, well, hey, this other company says they have their own presses and their own editors in-house, and they have a big giant staff. We say, okay, I tell you what, find out their physical address and Google it using street address. And we do this all the time. So here's BookBaby. Here's our address. All right. There we are on the map in beautiful Pennsauken Township of New Jersey. There's the aerial view. You can see I have my little work icon on there. Disc Makers is our sister brand, but BookBaby basically fills that entire building. And by the way, there's the street review. It's kind of old. We don't even have one of those brands, but that's what our building is. It's filled with printing presses. So let's check out one of our competitors just for fun. There's Page Publishing. They're located allegedly at 320 Water Street in Connet Lake, Pennsylvania. Okay, let's take a look. All right, look, there they are. You do the Google map. There they are. They're showing up. And then you do the oversight, and it says, oh, wait a minute, First National Bank ATM. Well, let's look at the street view, and oh, wait, it's a bank. They don't have printing presses there. They don't have people there. And so it's a fun little way for us to share and contrast our business with others. But you might find people with UPS mail stops. One notable competitor actually has their address where there's a car wash. So again, just another fun way to kind of determine who is it you're really dealing with, and you can have some questions answered by doing a little sleuthing with Google and Street View. All right. So number 2 is this. Look, promises. If the promise sounds too outrageous, if they say they can get you on the Today Show that hasn't been reviewing books for years, or Oprah, who's been off the air for years, it's just too good to be true. And they promise huge sales. They promise interviews on television. They promise celebrity endorsements. All right. If it's too good to be true, you've got to step back. And here's one that was actually found out in court. One of the most disreputable companies out there. They had something called a Hollywood package. All right. And these are coming from court documents when they were sued by a class action suit of authors. So they offer this package of $11,500. They said, we're going to take your manuscript and we're going to take it to Hollywood, and we're going to see if it's good enough for a movie. So 300 plus authors bought the package, and Company AS is their initials. They raked in $3.5 million. Only 2 books ever got options, 0 movie projects. Those kinds of things, again, it's just too good to be true that they're going to really actually do that. They're asking a lot of money, and it was for nothing. So just, again, beware of falling for these kinds of schemes where they're going to offer you this kind of access. They really don't have it, all right? Third thing is this. I see a lot of this where companies saying, well, typically our publishing package is $15,000, but for you, Mr. Spatz, today it's going to be $4,000 or whatever it is. If they're offering these kind of massive price discounts and they can do that and make money, you wonder really about how much this really does cost them. All right, if you can afford to give that much off. So again, just be aware of these kind of pricing techniques to make it sound as if you're getting a great deal, because you're really not. All right, shop around. The other thing that a lot of these companies is they want to force you into, this one-size-fits-all book package. Now, as we've learned over the 11 years we've done this, is that every book project is a snowflake. It's every single one of them is unique. Some of them need everything. Some of them just need distribution. Some of them just need books. And so any company that has an inflexible package that, say, I just want to do ebooks. Oh, but you've got to get the print. You've got to get the distribution. You've got to get, if they're going to talk you into all these other mandatory things, run away from them. Okay, that's not the way to do business. It needs to be more like a Chinese food menu where you can order a la carte. That's the best way to know you're getting exactly what you want, no more, no less. Okay. And then finally, this is the most important one, and this is where I hear the very sad stories of people locked up in these contracts, and they can get out of them, but they have to incur legal expenses. All right, if the publishing contract requires you to give up control of your manuscript, and it's not traditional. Now, traditional publishing is different. This is self-publishing. All right, if they say, give up, we're going to take control of it, we're going to take care of everything for you, don't sign it, okay? That's the sure thing. Now, look, our lawyers, by the way, there's a picture of our lawyer. They require that we have something called a term of service document, all right? And That's what they pay. They bill by the minute. So we've got something in 32 pages, something like that, with lots of these and thous and whereas. I can sum this agreement up in 10 words if you want to count. All right. Here's what's meaningful for you. You own everything. We own nothing. Have a nice day. Make sure you're working with a company that keeps control, allows you to keep control. All right. If the company says, nah, it's suddenly our intellectual property, run away. Don't sign. Don't give them any money. That's a surefire bet that, again, if they're a traditional publisher, there are traditional publishing contracts, and that's part of what they're doing and part of the service that you're getting. So publishing companies are not like that. So you need to make sure that you retain the rights to everything that you do. And that's even if you have a cover brought in or if you have the editing done, you've got to make sure that you retain all of those properties, okay? And then finally, there's this one word that really is golden, and that is this. Everything needs to say it's guaranteed, all right? That's very important. Now, nobody can guarantee sales of a book, all right? And BookBaby doesn't do that either. We guarantee our products, and I'll tell you, it's on the front page of our website. Everything that we do, all the work we do is 100% guaranteed. For any reason you don't like it, I offended you somehow by wearing a yellow shirt during these broadcasts, fine, we'll be sad and we'll cry, but we'll hand you back all your materials and away you go. But just make sure that they do have a satisfaction guarantee. And again, a lot of other reputable companies will do that. And it's the unreputable ones that will have the situation where you really have to question it. Okay. So again, just to sum up a little bit, it's pretty easy. I don't want to scare you away from jumping into self-publishing because it can be great. All right. But just be careful about who you choose. Again, it's just talking about question them. How long have you been in business? Can I talk to some of the authors that you have published? How many books have you done? Things like that. Challenge their promises. It doesn't sound too good to be true. Go to the BookBaby authors forum, on Facebook and say, hey, I got this deal from publisher XYZ that says I'll do this. How does that sound? Let other authors guide you to that. All right. So be skeptical of the huge price discounts or bundles you can't order a la carte. No, don't be talked into it. In the car business, it's like rust undercoat or something like that. They tried to add it into every car sale. No, just order what you need. If you don't need it, don't buy it. You shouldn't have to pay for it. And again, maintain ownership, control of your book at all costs. Walk away from people who say, no. Now, if you need to get books, you can only order them from me. That's a real warning sign. Okay. And then finally, is the work guaranteed? If you're not happy with the cover design, can you get your money back or can you get another proof? Absolutely. That's essential to the kind of trust. And again, I don't want to scare people away from doing this. There are many more good companies than there are bad companies. But it's just that lately I've just been hearing some real sob stories, and we help people out as much as we can, but we can't intercede in other contracts. So just do a little bit of work, feel comfortable, feel proud that you're working with a reputable company, and it's worth your time. All right, finally, I'd like to read a nice note from Rich a couple weeks ago. And he said, BookBaby made it easy. The whole publish your own book thing is a tough road to hoe. It's true, but we do make it easy. If you get stuck, we have actual real human people with knowledge and training and experience and patience and kindness to help you right there on the phone. Swell platform. Moved all my novels into the BookBaby bookshop and let them take me wide. And I do think Rich made a really good idea. It's not just being an Amazon, but distributing wide in many bookstores. So BookBaby made it easy, and I'm glad that we could help him in that way. Finally, I want to tell you about our podcast, which has been going really well, and it drops tomorrow. Matter of fact, we have Ray Ripple, who is the star of a Netflix series, Metal Shop Masters, and her book was entitled When I Grow Up, and it's just been released, and it's available in our bookshop. And so check out the podcast, and you can go to any of your typical podcast providers, and you will find them, I'm sure. All right, and finally, it is question time, and I see some of the questions are piling up, and you can keep coming with them, and I'll try to get to as many as I can in the next 10 minutes or so. Let me start with one, though, that I got in advance and make sure that I get to her question. She asked me about a timeline. She said, okay, if I turn my manuscript in, how long will it take to get up into the marketplaces? And I had to tell her, well, that depends, because that really does depend on a lot of factors. My overriding point is books can't be rushed, okay? We're going to have this topic, I'm sure, coming up in about a couple of months about trying to get your book done in time for the holiday. It's a false deadline. Don't be a slave to a false deadline. Your book is ready when your book is ready. And by that, I mean, is it edited? Take the time for that and make sure you go through the edits. We'll get ebook and printed book files ready for you, but that means that you need to sit there and look at them to make sure. It's amazing how many times that people, in fact, I would say it's a good 3/4 of the time, they think everything's edited, they hand us the manuscript, it's fine, then they get it in an ebook file and they're able to look at it on a device, and all these typos and these things start popping up in your face. And it's until you get it in a different medium and even on paper if you get a press proof. So it takes time to get everything perfect. It is measured in weeks, but it's not measured in years as a traditional publish. So if you give us the manuscript just on May 1st, typically it's going to take a good 6 to 8 weeks, really of real dedicated work, both from us and from the author. The author can sit there for 3 months and be looking at their press proofs, and we can't advance the project along. So if the author is motivated, yeah, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks. If the author has a lot of corrections, they need a lot of changes, we're going to get to them as quickly as we can, but it's going to lengthen it out. But my point is really, don't try to set a hard and fast date. Make that a goal, and if we hit it, great. But if we can't, we're not going to. You shouldn't rush a book. We don't have rush charges at BookBaby. We don't have some deal saying, oh, we'll get your book done in 3 weeks, and you can pay a lot more. It just doesn't happen that way. We don't want to force it. We want to make sure you have the best book possible. So glad I answered that question. Okay, so let's get to yours. So Marianne asks, where can I share a nice note about BookBaby? BookBaby has been beyond what I expected. Well, that's not a question, but it's a really good one. Put it on Google, go to Trustpilot, go to Authors Forums. We thank you for being an ambassador of BookBaby. I appreciate that. Marianne, thank you very much. All right, Ken asks, if you pull your game from KDP Direct and rewrite it, can you republish it via Amazon after the rewrite is done without being tied to Amazon only? Okay. So what I'm hearing is rewrite. All right. So that tells me second edition, new book. So if you're rewriting a book, you're going to need a new ISBN number. And Amazon and BookBaby and everybody else is going to treat it as a completely separate book. So you're free to do anything with it. Now, I get a ton of questions about ISBNs. And there are no hard and fast rules about it, by the way. But here's how we interpret it. If you see some changes in your book you need to make after it's been out in distribution, all right, minor typos, you misspelled your mother's name, God forbid, we can make those changes, republish it, redistribute it out there without changing the ISBN. You didn't add content. You didn't change the plot of the book. You didn't add another chapter. You can keep the same ISBN. But Ken, what I'm seeing from your question is, if you're rewriting it, you're starting from scratch. You can go direct to Kindle if you want. You can come to BookBaby. You can go to other folks. Basically, that's book number 2 if you're rewriting it, if you're revising it. It's either a brand new book or a second edition of your first book. You'll still have the ISBN of your first book. You'll need to get an ISBN of your second book. By the way, you need 2 ISBNs if you do an ebook and a printed book. They're separate numbers. And that's another thing. By the way, our next broadcast is going to be about some of these details. I get a ton of questions about front matter and ISBNs. Tune in next month, and we're going to cover a lot of that stuff, which doesn't sound very sexy, but God, we get a ton of questions about it, so I think it's helpful. Okay, John asks, can you briefly describe the process for cover design you offer? Excellent question, John. So what we do is we ask you to fill out a questionnaire, basically, and the best thing the author can do is find book covers they like. All right, first look at the genre. All right, look at the books that are, when you type in a genre on Amazon and they bring up the top selling books, take note of the kind of fonts they're on, the colors they're on. What's on the cover? Is it a person? A lot of times it is. Is it more line drawing? Is it photographs? So kind of be educated to approach the process. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're gonna send you to what we call our survey. It's a questionnaire, and we're gonna ask you a ton of questions about the mood of the book. If you can imagine your book in a color, what would it be? All kinds of questions like that. And it's pretty amazing how even on the first pass from the survey, we get your input. We ask for, if you have examples of covers you like, great, you can send them to us. And we'll turn around and generate, and I don't know the exact lead time these days. I think it's 5 to 8 days, although I'm probably going to get a nasty note from the design manager saying, no, it's 8 to 10 days. Anyway, quickly, we'll get you a design proof for you to look at. If you love it, great. If you don't, we'll revise it. And we'll keep revising it. We'll keep making it better. I happen to say that within the first 2 proofs, about 99% of our covers get approved by the authors. It doesn't take that long. I mean, I would say you submit your survey to us within about 2 weeks. You're going to get your first proof back for you to approve, and we'll ask you about, do you like it? Can we change this? We're amazingly flexible. And you saw earlier up on the broadcast, I will skip by a page. I'm sorry I didn't notice it. Those were examples of our book covers. Go to our website, take a look at all the design work we do. We do some really amazing covers now. So, but it's a real process. We ask your input. All right? Without your input, we don't know how to really do a cover correctly. So you're a partner in this, okay? Charles says, we need help straightening my account at Amazon UK handling that. Can you help us? Well, unfortunately, we cannot help. We can't intercede on anybody else's account unless you're a BookBaby customer. All right? If you're a BookBaby customer, absolutely, we're your advocate. And one of the benefits of working with BookBaby is you never have to be on a queue waiting for Amazon to answer your call, because that's what we do. All right, we'll take that up. We are constantly checking to make sure our books are available, everywhere. But if there's any kind of problem, it's up to us to solve. That's what you've hired us to do. Again, that's part of the promise when you sign that term of service that our lawyers want you to sign. Part of the deal is it's up to us to resolve these kinds of situations. So that's something BookBaby can handle. But if you're not a BookBaby customer, I'm afraid I can't help you. I'm sure the Amazon folks will answer it. You've got to be persistent with those folks. Keep calling. Okay. And yes, if I use a picture from NASA for my book cover, do I need their permission? I'm going to say yes. You probably do. I would default to that. That would be a really good question to ask, though. Once you're in that process, we can typically find illustrations that have been approved by NASA. If you have something you like, I bet you we can probably find something which is very close, which is already licensed. So you can submit that to us as here's what I want it to look like. Now, if you get permission from NASA, great. But I would say anything that is not your own, that you haven't licensed, you need to get approval for. That's kind of a blanket statement. But I would ask, once you're in the process, that's a good question to ask the publishing specialist who you would work with. Okay, Tom asked, do you know if any author has pulled a book and changed the cover to increase sales? Oh my God, yes, all the time. This happens, a lot. In fact, it used to be we didn't offer cover design a la carte. All right, cover design was always bundled in with some of our ebook distribution or print book distribution. Then we got a lot of questions saying, my God, I just need help with my cover. Can I just buy a cover from you guys, even if they weren't distributing through us? Yes, and it works. You will not need to get another ISBN because it's the same book, but you can change your cover. I mean, there are books out there that have multiple covers depending upon the country they're in. Some countries have different cover conventions that we've actually worked on in other languages. So changing your cover can absolutely impact your sales if you don't have a great cover. I heartily recommend it. Okay. What about using images in the public domain? Ken asks. Yes. If you have some notation to help us to make sure that we don't have to go searching for it, any documentation you have saying, hey, I found this photograph, it's in the public domain, that will help us. But we will question it. We don't want our authors to get in trouble. Okay. We're only going to question it to save you, to make sure you're doing everything and not being a foul. So any documentation you have that can show that, yes, this illustration or this photograph can be used, that's great. Okay. Patricia asks, can I use a family member who does original illustrations to do my book cover and or a chapter illustration? I'm a current customer. Thank you, Patricia, for being a current customer. Absolutely. If you have a talented family member, you go to the head of the class. Good for you. And typically I say to people, if your sister-in-law went to the Art College of Philadelphia, that doesn't mean they're a cover designer. But if you're happy with her work, absolutely. I mean, I would say only about maybe 60% of BookBaby customers use our cover design because they have one that either they've done themselves, they've had a friend do, or they've had another cover designer who they've already worked with do it. That's great. Bring it on. That's fine. And also for the chapter headings, all elements you want to bring into the process, absolutely fine. We don't force you to use our people. That's, again, part of the process. If you have a company that says, no, you have to get our design and our formatting, walk away from them. That's not being helpful. We want to incorporate. It's your book. If you feel better with your illustrations for the chapters, great. We want to incorporate that. We welcome it. Okay. Island Geriatrics, interesting, asks, I'm reluctantly on Facebook to keep up with family and friends. Just not a fan of social media. Hello. No Twitter. No Instagram. Is that a death nail? Will I therefore never publish? No, I wouldn't say you would never publish. I myself am not on Facebook. I'm on Twitter only professionally. It does make it a bit of a challenge because people are used to that. So my answer for you is this, that you need to do public events. You need to get out there to libraries and do book signings and get email addresses. All right. That would be the way to communicate with people. I will be doing a session here probably in two months about how to get an author email list, which is vitally important, I think, for authors to get. It's very valuable. People are used to transacting it. Email, people say, oh, email is dead. No, email is still very much alive, especially in the purchase of books. So I'd hardly recommend it. So again, if you're not on social media, and God love you, you probably have a lot of spare time on your hands. That's awesome. Good for you. No, it doesn't mean you can't publish. It's helpful, but it's not mandatory. So you have to be creative and think of other ways to get the word out about your book. Okay, one more question. Dorothy asks, if I have a book already published and need a new publisher, may I keep the same cover from that first publisher? Only if you get permission, expressed permission from that publisher. Easier said than done. And we would have to make sure again, that's part of the documentation we would ask, that we would need to see some kind of signed agreement from publisher A before we would put it on a book that we would publish. Maybe they're nice, maybe they'll be happy to do it, great. But again, we want to keep you, the author, out of trouble to have these safeguards. All right, happy to announce the winner of the publishing consult is Marianne Nathaniel, and I'll be talking to you sometime in the next few weeks. So I think we've gone through our 30 minutes plus, and I hope you've enjoyed this about scams. Again, make sure it's guaranteed. Don't sign away your rights. That's my lesson for the day. If you have any other questions, here's my email. I usually get a slew of them after this broadcast, so be patient with me. It might take a couple of days for me to get to them, but I eventually do get to them. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I will see you next month.